Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you so much for joining me for this brand new interview. I had to put the glasses on so I could read the statistics of this individual right here. The person I'm interviewing today, of course, a brand new interview, of course, someone that you may have seen on AEW Dark recently as a part of a tag team match along with Ryzen. But this man is not just your average wrestler. No. He is a Southern California native. He has been trained the likes of Jesse Hernandez and the EWF over there in the Empire Wrestling Federation. But not only that, there's a couple of championships that this individual has won from the Alternative Wrestling Show in the AWS Light Heavyweight Championship, AWS three-time tag team champion, Race of the Ring tag team tournament winner as well, along with Peter Avalon, Battleground Pro Wrestling Warrior Championship, or Ring Warrior Championship, excuse me, as well as Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, where he did win the tag team championship 3 times along with Peter Avalon, and of course the UWN Championship. And I did mention about the Empire Wrestling Federation Cruiserweight Championship he did win, as well as Rookie of the Year, Match of the Year against Jeremy Jager in a TLC match at the Jingle Slam. So enough of the accomplishments, but ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let me introduce you to the one and only Ray Rosas. How are you?
Hey man, thanks. You make me seem way cooler than I actually feel sometimes. A lot of those accomplishments are wow. I forgot all about some of that stuff.
Of course. And of course, what was interesting for me too is that when I found out about Ray Rosas, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this guy a couple times. Like, I've seen the stuff that he has done on the independent scene, especially in the California scene as well.
Yeah. I've been bounced around, kicking around over here for almost 12 years now. And I've been grinding it out. I was actually getting ready to retire this year. Mm-hmm. But luckily for me, I didn't. Because all these opportunities came, all these bigger opportunities came now. So luckily I held out, and good, because now look what I've been able to accomplish beyond. Because I thought that I was ready over the hill. I thought my expiration date had come. Like I said, that's it for Ray. His career is in the sunset, in the twilight. So. But then I guess there's a lot more road ahead of me still,
Absolutely. And especially with a strong performance in his AEW Dark appearance. Before we get into everything, though, about your career and everything, I do always start these interviews off with a spitball or fireball question. So you talk about how much, you almost retired and then now you're still continuing on with your career. If you were to have retired, would you be still proud of the matches that you have produced in your illustrious career?
I would have been proud, because I was already kind of, like I said, I was seriously contemplating retirement, and and when that comes, you do always look back and just like, well, did I leave a mark? Did I leave a good mark, or did I accomplish anything of really of note? And I did. I was proud of a lot of the work that I had done. I helped a lot of people. I trained a lot of people and helped them get better. I wrestled against some big names and had some pretty good matches. So I was satisfied. If that was going to be it, then I thought back and thought, that's a good career.
Absolutely. And speaking about Ray Rosas, of course, you can't talk about Ray Rosas until you talk about the California wrestling scene. So many great matches from there, not only talking about championship wrestling from Hollywood, but also the Empire Wrestling Federation when you were EWF Cruiserweight champion. I mean, like, does it ever get to you sometimes where you're like, man, like, just Southern California is such a special area for professional wrestling?
It's a big hotbed in terms of talent, in terms of promotions out here, because there's a lot of hybrid styles in terms of the American professional wrestling and lucha libre. So you get a lot of people with these mixed styles that I think that you may not see in other areas. Of course, there's EWF, there's the Alternative Wrestling Show. Santino was wrestling, Championship Wrestling Hollywood. There was Battleground back in the day. There was an Insane Wrestling League that I was a big part of, especially early on in my career. PWG's out here. That's probably the biggest, most well-known fed. There was bar wrestling that was pretty big for a good while before it went under. But you know, there's a lot of great wrestlers out here. There's a lot of great wrestlers that pass through here. And I'm glad, like, now that a lot of these a lot of SoCal wrestlers are finally getting some recognition and branching out onto a national scale. We have like Tyler Bateman going to ROH, Peter Avalon, Scorpio Sky going to AEW, Willie Mack over in Impact, and you know, and of course all the legends that have come through here and gone out. But there's a drought for a while where nobody was coming out of Southern California. So you see guys like Willie and Sky and Peter branching, and Tyler Bateman branching out and getting on a bigger stage. And even just right now, just recently, Russ Taylor going into competing in the peer title tournament. So it's exciting time, you know, for SoCal indie wrestlers to show the rest of the world what we got and what we've been doing around here.
Absolutely. And speaking about Ray Rosas, of course, you talk about the passion of pro wrestling that you do have. And I do want to talk about your beginnings. Of course, you were trained by Santino's brothers, and you started your career back in 2010. And well, I mean, technically you made your debut in 2009, but you know, of course, since 2009, you have been going strong. What was it like kind of getting that training under Joey Munoz and kind of getting that, you know, that training behind, you know, your wrestling career?
So what I always compared Santino Bros like training to was like boot camp, like you're joining the military. And I did ROTC, so I kind of was you know, kind of like caught on to that early, like because they break you down pretty good, and they kind of kept that pro wrestling tradition where they try to, you know, weed out the weaklings and keep the strong ones and kind of protect the business in that sense. You know, the old Hiro Matsuda breaking Hulk Hogan's leg and see if he comes back, and then he knows he's for real. Maybe not that serious, but you know, the first couple of weeks is just push-ups and squats and grappling and a little bit of shoot fighting, just to like weed out the weak and see who were the real ones that were, you know, really interested and really wanted to be pro wrestlers. Because, you know, like, you think you're going to go in and bounce on the ropes and do some, you know, ear, you know, Hulk Hogan ear things and be The Rock and be whomever. But like, there's a whole foundation you got to build, and just learning how to roll and tumble and showing your fighting spirit. And because you go in there and you grapple. And I really have no athletic background. I have no sort of wrestling, amateur wrestling or any type of mixed martial arts experience. So I was kind of thrown in there with the wolves, kind of like grappling with these guys and then trying to, you know, tap me out and choke me out. And you know, I felt like I held my own pretty well, because, you know, I have uncles and cousins that I used to wrestle and fight with all the time. So that kind of always prepares you. But you know, so like, yeah, you're just doing squats and push-ups and crunches and working out and repetition with just, you know, locking up and producing headlocks and countering a headlock. And you'd be doing that, and we were doing that in the garage, and I wasn't even allowed inside the ring, you know, for like about a month. And even then it's still kind of early for a lot of conservative places. But I, you know, first couple weeks of training, I was always throwing up at least once, and usually it was just water, you know, because it's so nerve. I always try to remember the excitement that I had like those first couple weeks of training, you know, like not be able to sleep the night before, and then getting there and you're nervous because like you're excited because like, oh, I'm wrestling training, but you're nervous because like, oh man, we're gonna work out really hard and they're gonna make us do some stuff and we're gonna throw up and this and that. So it was a weird time, but I always try to hold on to that feeling to keep me, you know, fresh, keep a fresh mindset, because there are times when I do kind of, you know, forget that and I get kind of beat down by the business and you get discouraged, and there's days when you just hate it, you know, days that you don't want to get up to go do it, days that you don't want to make the drive. So, you know, when I think back to those days when I was really excited, just eager to get into the ring, and then you kind of remember not to take it for granted, because there's a lot of guys that I've seen come into the school and then washed right out. And then there's guys that were, you know, and some people that were like athletes, they'd come in and they couldn't take it and they'd wash out. And then you get this little skinny kid, and then he'd me. I was a real skinny kid, and then I made it through, and I would get beat up by Supreme, by Joey Chaos, by Mongol, Santino, Angel, Exotico, all these old XPW guys, and they would beat me up, and they loved it because the way I bumped and the way I would take it, and you know, bloody noses and split lips, and then heal up all week, and then come back again on Saturday and have it happen all over again. Those were the good old days, looking back, and it's like, yeah, they were beating me up a little bit, but it was teaching me how to be tough. Because again, I was just a skinny kid. I'd never really been in any fights. I had no athletic background, so they really toughened me up, and it got me through a lot of tough situations in the years that followed.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing that the wrestling training is of course tough, but I mean, just knowing that you have the passion for professional wrestling to keep going, to keep, getting beat up every day, as you would say. It's just awesome to have that motivation.
It gave me that, or at least early then, and in nowadays too, but it gave me that sense of fulfillment. You go through life and you're working, and you're just working to make money, to pay bills. And when I was wrestling, I felt like this is where I belonged. This is where I was supposed to be, and it felt that gave me that feeling of fulfillment, because I was like, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And luckily I've been able to hold on to that. And I still have that feeling all the time when I wrestle. It's like, dang, like there are people out there that dream and work hard to become, become firefighters or doctors or lawyers. That's or dream to do something like that. And my dream is to be a professional wrestler, and I became one. That was my dream, and I became one, and I live it. And it's so that's the kind of, it's very special, because there are people that dream to be something and they never get a chance to, or they can never accomplish it, or life gets in the way. And I dreamt of being a wrestler, and I got to be one, and I got to be pretty successful at it. And I'll always, cherish that and try to not take that for granted.
Absolutely. And just the dream of becoming a professional wrestler, just eating you inside, and then you finally becoming that professional wrestler. I mean, it had to feel like a kid in the candy store.
Right. So, yeah, to have your dream and to live your dream. I mean, there's no better feeling. No, that's why I say you just feel fulfilled to do it.
Absolutely. And speaking about that, I'm very curious now. What inspired you to become a professional wrestler?
I think same story as everybody else, right? They were watching it when they were young, and then they just start backyard wrestling with their friends, and my friends were like, man, you're the best of us, and you're really good. And I was in, drama. So I was in theater. So I liked performing. I liked attention, but the flip side is I was really shy as a kid. So getting a chance to perform and be someone else, was enticing. So, it's just like, oh, cool. I could be as loud and obnoxious, but I'm performing and I'm acting. So it's cathartic in a way, because you're just like letting out some of this anxiety that you built up as an introvert, as a shy person, which is funny, right? Because like you would look at me perform, and you'd watch me, and you would like, oh, there's no way that Ray's like an introvert or antisocial, but I was as a young man. But of course, like wrestling was super popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. Very, very impressionable age. At that time, I was 12, 13, 14, into it. Watched every Monday Night Raw, watched every Monday Nitro, every pay-per-view. Kept track of all the title changes in my head, all the dates, and then you became a wrestling historian. And I remember watching it, being able to watch it differently, and almost ruining it for my friends, because I would like, I remember one particular example was I was watching the WWF Invasion pay-per-view, and it was the 5-on-5 main event. And I remember sitting there watching it with my friends, and I go, oh, Steve Austin's going to turn. And they're like, what? And I'm like, Steve Austin's going to turn. Damn it. Oh, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then later on, Steve Austin made the big heel turn and joined the Alliance. And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, I could just tell. Because I was just watching, and I could just tell. And from that, like, so that was just from that point on, like just watching wrestling, I was able to watch it and see it differently, see the intricacies, and like, and break it down in a way that my friends weren't able to. They're just watching wrestling and blah, blah, blah. But I was able to like, oh, see, like, oh, they always do the same like headlock, shoot him into the ropes, and they take the tackle, and nobody like, what do you mean? I'm like, almost every match somebody like does that, or every night somebody does that. So then they started to pay attention to that type of stuff too. And I'd be like, oh, watch out, he's gonna clothesline him right now, and then boom, so I would throw a clothesline because I was like, oh, they did that spot in a pay-per-view like 2 months ago, and then when they were wrestling now on TV, so I was able to watch it a little differently and annoying unto the annoying my friends because I'd be ruining this. And when I go the night Chris Jericho debuted on Monday Night Raw, me and my friend were watching. We were really excited to find out who it was, and I remember turning him like, would it be crazy if it was Chris Jericho? And he's like, oh man, he was saying, and boom, it was like, damn it, like.
You already knew when it was happening before it happened.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I just would know. I'm like, because I just realized, and I was like 11 or 12 at the time, and I just remember like I haven't seen Chris Jericho in WCW in a long time, and I'm like, wouldn't it be crazy? And it just, boom. But again, it's just that attitude era, man. There's so much great wrestling, especially for like to watch smaller guys go in there and wrestle, like Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio, Eddie, Jericho, and all the luchadors, and Ultimo Dragon, and you just like watching the cruiserweights do some crazy stuff. It's almost cliche now at this point. If you ask any wrestler, like, oh, what got you into it? It's like, oh, the WCW cruiserweights, because a lot of us are, me, I'm like 5'8", about 199 pounds, and if I broke into wrestling, 10 years earlier than I did, I wouldn't have been anything but a referee,
Right.
So it was good time to be a wrestler now, no matter what size, shape, or anything. You can do it.
I know anybody can do it. I mean, obviously you see people like Rey Mysterio, who's his height, his weight, doing what he does best as a cruiserweight. And you mentioned about cruiserweights in WCW. I do want to mention that the best cruiserweights, in my opinion, were actually the ECW cruiserweights with Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and the stuff that they were doing, as well as Chris Benoit back in the day as well.
Yeah, they and then they got picked up by WCW because. And then and those are great stories, and those are stories that were very that had left a great impression on me, was the Benoits and the Eddies and the Jericho stories, because they went from like the Indies and then went to ECW and then went to WCW, and then and those remember those old documentaries that they put on the DVDs, like those are pretty fresh, like those like now it's like WWE 24 and all the different types of documentaries of The Last Ride, and so those are normal now, those are regular. But like back then, you didn't see those career retrospectives in that Eddie Guerrero DVD or the Benoit DVD, and you see them struggle all the way to make it to the WWE, the pinnacle, and then they win the 4th title. So those left a big impression on me. I remember being very, very hurt when Eddie died and when Benoit committed suicide. And it's like, 'cause those are my 2 favorite wrestlers. And I remember falling out of wrestling a little bit after that, but I got back into it. And,
absolutely. And speaking about,
thank God I did.
And speaking about Ray Rosas, you not just had Ray Rosas in professional wrestling. You had a couple names actually that you went by in the ring. I do have a list over here, so excuse me if I do squint a little bit. We're also known as the Santino Kid, as well as Ray Rose and El Galan. I'm hoping I'm saying that properly.
El Galan. Yeah.
Yes, El Galan, and of course Black Tiger 8. And
what, the Black Tiger 8 one, I don't know where that came from. It just showed up online, and somebody just named me Black Tiger 8. I don't even think there's like a Black Tiger 6 or 7. But someone had asked me that. I was also when I did my little I did a match on ROH, and I was Ricardo Rojas, because they had Raymond Rowe on the show there, and they didn't want Raymond Rowe and Ray Rosas on the same show, so they had to rename me Ricardo Rojas. So and I was El Galana when I was a big time babyface luchador. Santino Kid. I was a Santino Kid once when I was wearing a mask, like my debut battle royal. And I originally was supposed to be Ray Rose. That was the name that I had chosen, because I was a big Guns N' Roses fan. And so I was like, I'll be Ray Rose. And I think I used that name maybe twice before I went to a Lucha Libre company called Mexican Wrestling Federation. Is out here in Commerce. And they had a habit of like, I guess, translating or having bad translations of wrestlers' names. So there was a wrestler that I trained with that was named Famous B.
Mm.
So when they put his name on the flyer for that Lucha Libre company, they called him Fabuloso B. Right. And so we all kind of were funny. Like, so then when I was going to that company, I went from being Ray Rose to being Ray Rosas.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being super upset about it. Like, man, I'm not Ray Rosas, I'm Ray Rose, but then my trainer, Joey Chaos, liked the way that sounded. And then he put my name on another flyer for Santino's, and I just stuck. I was Ray Rosas forever. And I hated it at first, but hindsight's 2020. I don't see myself being anything else but Ray Rosas. And it's just, and then even to the point where like people were like, oh, just roll the R's, Rosa. So every time I cut promos and did introductions, I would try to roll the R as long as I can, and Rosas and louder, So, on the flip side, I could have been Ray Gunn since I was a Guns N' Roses fan, and I remember like going, man, I could have been a Ray Gun, a little laser. Oh man, I missed that. Oh, with this, there some alternate universe. I'm Ray Gunn instead of Ray Rosas.
Right. Of course, when you talk about Ray Rosas, I mean, of course, you've had such an illustrious career thus far. And of course, you were talking about, oh, what if, I was going to retire, and then getting called by AEW Dark, and then, oh, I'm in a tag team match. That's cool. But before I get into that more, I do want to talk about something that maybe I think you would consider an inspiration too, and that's your family. How much that has impacted you. Of course, I believe you do have a son, that's a big inspiration to you. He's your best friend that you post a lot on your social media.
Yeah.
How much of an impact have they had in your professional wrestling career?
Well, I have 3 kids. So I have one. My oldest daughter, and then my 2 sons. My oldest son, yeah, he's my homie. He's my best friend. So it's hard to, when it comes to my son, right? He looks up to me, and I kind of always wanted to be a dad, right? That was always my thing. Maybe I didn't realize that's what I wanted, but when I became a father, I was like, oh, this is if I'm nothing else but just a good dad, I can live my life. That's it. I can totally live my life just being a great dad, because that's all that really matters at this point. So having to set a good example, and what better way to set a good example is by chasing my dreams and doing what I need to do, inspiring my son to, like, whatever you want to do, son, whatever dumb dream you have, whatever it is, no matter how dumb it is, like, go after it, chase it. And I had support from my parents to do it. I mean, it's crazy. It's like telling your parents you want to join the circus. But my parents are very understanding and supportive. And so no matter whatever he wants to do, my sons and my daughter, whatever my kids want to do, they're going to have the same loving support that I had. So, I just try to lead by example. And the same thing with all my trainees and my students is like, just lead by example, show people respect, and you earn their respect, and don't wait for the handouts, and try not to, just try to earn everything on your own merit. But my family, my wife especially, look, I'm so glad I'm very fortunate that she's a wrestling fan, because she has to put up with a lot, whether it was the early days when I'd be dragging her to shows to watch me, and driving across, she'd be my road dog, and we'd be driving across the strait, or driving across state lines to go to shows, and she'd be up late with me because the shows would be ending late, and then then later on when we had the kids, and she would stay home with the kids, and I'd be out doing God knows what, for her, not knowing what I'm out there, but I'm out there wrestling, trying to build the name, and so she's been very supportive. As a matter of fact, she was the one that talked to me out of retiring. She was the one that was like, you shouldn't do that, because you're not going to be happy. You're going to be sitting here and you're going to be miserable at home all the time. And I remember telling, like, oh, I won't be. Like, I'll be able to do stuff. Like, I'll be able to join a bowling league and live a life, because every weekend I'm gone wrestling, or, in the middle of the week, and sometimes late nights, I'm just gone, training and running classes. But she's like, no, you need to just keep doing it, because that's what you love to do, and that's what you're good at, and you should just keep doing it. So like a lot of back and forth, and then so I finally was like, you're right, like I gotta keep doing it. She convinced me to stay, and I told her like, well, then if I'm gonna stay, if I'm not gonna retire, this will be maybe my last 1 or 2 years, so I gotta dive in completely. Like I gotta just go in all in on it to give it one last good shot, because I've always been half in, half out, trying to live a normal life with a shoot job, and trying to be a wrestler, but with the family going and with the job, you can't go too far. You can't, you're always tethered, because you have responsibilities you got to take care of, and I've always believed that, like, you should always have something to fall back on just in case, and I do. And then also it's like I also got to have responsibilities to take care of my family. I always try to have that balance, and it's a tough balance. So like any amount of time I spend wrestling or wrestling training, I have to spend double the amount of time with my family. So like I'll be gone wrestling shows, making money, but I'll use that money to buy Disney annual passes for us so that we can go to Disneyland, and so at the end of the day, wrestling was just for the family, just to pay for and take care of and make sure they're secure. So they're a big motivation. They're a big factor in why I still do this and why I continue to do it. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going all in, and she's like, I support you. So I'll take care of everything here at home, and you just go out there and do what you got to do. And with that mindset, with that teamwork that her and I have, I'm able to go out there and do it, and get on AEW Dark was a goal that I had made for us, and we accomplished that. It's crazy how 2020 has been such a bad year for like everyone in the world, but for me professionally, it's been one of my best. So it's just funny how that worked. I just remember telling my wife, like, how did we end up in a positive throughout all this?
Yeah,
it's good.
Absolutely. And it's awesome that that you have your family members, you have your your wife and your kids as your biggest motivators to ignite that passion of professional wrestling. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I love it,
Absolutely. And speaking about AEW Dark, I do want to talk about that really quick. Of course, you were in a tag team match, of course, with Ryzen. So I got to ask, like, when you got that email, when you got that message saying that you were going to be on AEW Dark, what was the reaction like?
I didn't believe it. I've always been very skeptical, about anything in wrestling, because I've been told I've had a lot of opportunities coming up, and then some, they just fall through. It's a business, some sort of something happens, and a trip or a booking or something falls through. So I've always been kind of like, well, I'll believe it when I see it, or I'm gonna wait and see. I've been in this business long enough to know, like, that's the mindset I need to have. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. So I got a text, and I got a call, and then I was just like, waiting for an email. Like, okay, I'll wait for an email. And I remember, like, sending a text back going like, hey, I haven't got an email yet. Just want to make sure you have my correct email. And they're like, no, it's coming. And I'm like, okay, if it's coming. And I was like, I need to book a flight, and trying to get all the stuff squared away. And then then it finally came, and then I was like, oh, it is real. Okay. And then that's when like the rush of like nerves and excitement come, because like, oh shoot, now I do have to go. Like, oh no. Like, now I'm excited. Cause like I said, you're like, at first you're like, oh, not really. Again, you're skeptical, you're not certain if it's going to happen or not. Then it finally did. And then, man, the excitement, and then mixed with the nervousness, because you're like, oh man, I'm going to be on a much bigger platform, and with much bigger stars and a lot of eyes watching that particular product. So you're like, oh man, I hope I don't mess anything up. I hope hope I don't stink up the joint, and they never want me back ever again, and I hope I don't make the people look bad that were putting in good words for me. So there's a lot of a lot of stuff that goes into it, But otherwise, I think that when I got there, I think I shook all the nerves, and I was like, I'm a professional. That professional wrestler has the word professional in it, and this is my job. This is what I trained to do. So I'm just going to go out there and work and do my job like I do everywhere else I go. And then once I kind of looked at that mindset, it's like I train every day. I've been doing this for 12 years or 11 or 12 years now, and I shouldn't be nervous anymore. I should just be ready to go and be seen as equal, be seen as a peer to a lot of these people. And that's the main goal that I've been trying to accomplish is look like an equal, to look like a peer to a lot of the top stars.
Absolutely. And of course, what better way to debut against two Southern California natives, and of course SCU, Scorpio Sky, and of course Frankie Kazarian. I mean, just think about that. Scorpio Sky coming from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and of course Frankie Kazarian, a Southern California legend in the professional wrestling world. I mean, how better can you get with a Southern California native debuting on AEW Dark than to face some Southern California stars?
Yeah, it really helps. It really helped. That also kind of helped with the nerves. Like, oh, cool. I'm gonna wrestle Sky. I know Sky very well. I've wrestled Sky tons of times, and I have tons of love for Frankie. I think we even wrestled each other once at bar. So I was really excited. Like, dang, this is going to be good. And what the icing on the cake was Rick Knox was our referee, who's a legendary SoCal ref here. So I was like, I even told him, like, it was good to have you my ref again, because he was always, a referee for a lot of my matches here in SoCal. So to have him back and to wrestle Sky was like a little mini SoCal reunion. So I was very excited to have to wrestle some guys that I was familiar with. A lot of the chemistry was already there, so that part was already, you have to worry about that part anymore. And Ryzen was great too. He was a great dude, very gracious. I appreciated some of the stuff he was helping me with, because he had already been there for a while, doing some dark. So I really appreciated a lot of the work he was helping, a lot of the help he was giving me.
Yeah, and I bet you were kind of interested once you heard the music of Ryzen, and you were just like, oh, okay, he's just doing the rise and stuff, and you just see. Did you get to see your Titan Shrine up there, or no?
I didn't see it at first. Like when I went out on the stage, I was in the zone. I was fortunate enough to be the only AEW dark match that actually had a live crowd.
Yeah.
So I was kind of focusing on that and focusing on the cameras. I didn't see the name on the Tron until it popped up on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And once I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that. And so then that made the rounds, and people found out that I was there. Because I didn't tell anybody, because again, I don't try to hype it up too much, and then for it to fall through, I'm always like that. I'm just paranoid like that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's all good though. I mean, you have your little preferences and stuff like that. It's there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. So then when people found out, they were like super, on Twitter, and it's because it was making the rounds and it's being shared, and so people were finding out it back at home and were really excited. The only people that I think knew were just my wife and like a few of my family members that knew that I was going to be there. So they were pretty excited for me. But then when everybody else found out, then I felt good that people were congratulating me and stuff. It's funny because I have I don't know, I've always had this weird complex, because when I first got the booking, I was like, oh, I felt like I didn't deserve to go. I always felt like, oh man, there's a bunch of people out here in SoCal that deserve a chance before me, and so I had a lot of people telling me that I deserved to be there, and that that I was good. They're glad that I went and stuff like that. So it was nice, because when I'm not a selfish wrestler. Like I'm almost to my own detriment. I'm always making the other person look good. I'm always getting their moves in. I think if you can't really look up a great Ray Rosas showcase match, because I don't really do a lot of moves. I've always just kind of like a a performer entertainer, and I try to get character over, and then I'd help the other guy and take all their moves and do all their do all their spots. So I was like nervous. It's like how do I really showcase myself when I don't normally do that? And like this guy and Frankie were helping me out to pull the shining light of Ray Rosas out of me to help me stand out a little bit. So that I'll always appreciate SCU for helping me, and said Ryzen too, like to letting me take the spotlight, taking the center stage.
Absolutely. And, before we go over here, I do want to thank you once again, Ray, for being a part of this interview and doing all that. But I got two more things. Of course, the first one, I do want to talk about your training, not just as a professional wrestler, but as a trainer. You've
Yes.
trained so many of these young up and coming prospects. I mean, when you look at the Southern California scene, look how many great Southern California wrestlers are being showcased in AEW, in NXT. You look at Jake Atlas, who was originally from the Southern California scene as a part of Santino's brothers and now is over there in NXT. You look at someone like Will Hobbs, someone that was a Northern California guy, boom, signed to AEW. I mean, there's so many great aspects in professional wrestling that's coming from California. But of course, Ray Rosas was a part of that process as well. Can you talk about training those up and coming, wrestlers, those young aspirations of young up and coming wrestlers?
Yeah, that's been a great like a whole nother outlet, a whole nother stage of professional wrestling as like a wrestler to move on to becoming a coach and trainer. Man, it's so rewarding. Just to take people that, because I've bounced around from training facilities. I trained at Santino's mostly, and then I trained with Los Luchas, who are one of the best underrated tag teams in SoCal. I trained a little bit with Jesse Hernandez, EWF. Trained at the Underground Empire Wrestling School, and then I finally moved my way to Millennium Pro Wrestling, where then they hired me on as on the staff to be a coach, and then eventually now I'm the head trainer there. So I've picked up a lot of different trainings, exercises and tips and tricks and stuff, and then I brought it to them. So they had instead of going to all these different places like I had to go, now they just come straight to me, and it's so making yourself a commodity, an asset that way to any promotion or company as a coach or a wrestler. And I'm like a player coach, right? So I'll be wrestling on we would run weekly shows for the students, and I'd be on there just to help one of our top students develop into becoming what I can do, being what I can do, lead people and to get them through a match. And I've had, so many different types of students come in, guy, girl, big, tall, short, skinny, and strong, like just so it's like such a different challenge. Like, okay, how do I help this person? How do I get this person to the next level? It's usually a lot of times it's just timing and footwork, and a lot of times it's just tweaking your match structure and psychology. So it's like I always kind of pretend like I'm like a football coach, right? Because I love football, so there's always analogies end up with being football. But it's like I'm a football coach, and I have all these different players in different positions, and I have to place them in positions to succeed. And I was like, okay, this person's my star quarterback. This one's my workhorse running back. These ones are my shutdown people that and it's just like, and it's like seeing wrestling in a whole different light now. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I'm not looking at it as just putting matches together as a wrestler. Now I'm like placing my students in matches to structure a whole show. And it's a whole different mentality. And it's one of my favorite things about wrestling is developing talent and booking them and putting a show together. And then sometimes I won't even be on the show and I just watch the talent. Okay, look at them utilizing a trick that I had just taught them, or look at them utilizing a something we were talking about a couple weeks ago, and they're utilizing it. And it's like, okay, cool. It's one thing to teach somebody something, but then it's another thing to watch them actually use it and then watch them succeed because they used it. So it's rewarding, and it's in a whole different way. And when I was set to retire, I was just going to be a coach full time and start up a whole new beginner class and just then develop somebody from nothing all the way to becoming a pro wrestler. So that was like, okay, let me see if I could do that, because I've taken guys that have had some training and then polish them up, fine tune them, and then, then send them on their way out into the wrestling world. But I was really interested to take a lump of coal, and then turn it into a diamond, like somebody from just with no wrestling experience, and just develop them from the beginning all the way to the end.
Yeah, and that's great just to, really treat your students as if it is a live show and just to kind of have that structure and just witnessing them learning the moves that you just taught them, or maybe something like you mentioned before of last week, a week before that, or something of that way. I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah. Like I said, just, and you have to figure out how to develop. Like I said, there's different body types, there's different learning skills, different levels of athleticism. So you have to like think like, okay, cool. How am I going to help this particular person figure out this move, or figure out this sequence, or figure out this concept? So it was like it was a good mental exercise, mental workout, to have to develop different styles and different body types and different levels of athleticism to their next level. Because some people would develop faster, some people would take a little more time. But I was always proud of all the students that I had, because they were always working hard for me, to try to be better. Like, and they would always be they'd be harder on themselves when they made mistakes than I would be, because they felt like they let me down. But those guys never did. They always did a great job. I'm too bad that this pandemic hit, because a lot of these guys were about to break out onto the scene and make themselves bigger stars, and make themselves more, like, all themselves well known. But the pandemic hit, so it kind of halted a lot of people's development. So hopefully, which means when everything finally opens up again, it's gonna be a lot of work for those guys.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, it's always process over outcome. It's always about the process and how you do it, rather than just, oh, you're on PWG this week.
Yeah. And that's we have to work really hard for that to happen. So these guys can, I mean, some of them can do it, but it's gonna be a lot of work to do that.
Yeah. So, of course, before we go, I always have this fun little segment of these interviews called 3 Fun Questions, where I always like to get the mood in and maybe just get some fun random questions in. So the first question I have for you, Ray, is that out of everybody you have faced in the independent scene before you made your AEW Dark appearance, favorite match?
Oh man, that's a tough one, because there's so many different styles of the matches that I've wrestled in. Man, favorite match. I've wrestled, one of the people that helped develop me and really helped me learn a lot out on the scene, has been B-Boy, the New Age Punisher B-Boy. So we've had like, I can't name any specific match, him and I. Probably one of our earlier ones, especially like when he was developing me the way now I develop people. But one of those early matches when with me and B-Boy, are always fun. And now, like, nowadays, we'll if we wrestle each other again, it's like, hey, let's just do our greatest hits from our past matches, and then we just go, all right, cool, I'll see you out in the ring. Drake Younger's was some good matches when I wrestled Drake Younger, because he's the first person that like showed that how tough I was. So it was like that Cactus Jack wrestling, Triple H, like, to show how tough Triple H could be. But that's like, oh, that's what I compare that to. And of course, teaming with Peter Avalon when we wrestled Curryman and Kikutaro, and we had a comedy match where Peter got knocked out, and then we put sunglasses on him, and then we had a weekend at Bernie's spot where I had to manipulate Peter's body to continue wrestling the match. So that's one that always probably be near and dear to my heart.
Oh man, those are definitely matches you guys can check out as well. Link will be down in the description below. But also, my second question to you, Ray, is something that I've always kind of wondered. Looking up Ray Rosas is, for those who are passionate or want to become a pro wrestler, do you have any advice to those up and coming like kids, or any of those kind of people that want to do it even through a pandemic?
And especially now more than ever, you have to really want it, and you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot of time away from your loved ones. Of course, I mean, those are cliched stuff, but you really have to have it. Like, you have to have the heart for it, because there'll be times when you're getting beat up. There'll be times you're working out hard, you can't stand, and at times you get hurt, I've had my knee reconstructed. I've been the longest period of wrestling besides now that I was out was because I was recovering from my knee surgery, and it came a point where like, do I want to go back to do this? And but then I was like, oh, that's a dumb question. Of course I do. So of course I'm the type of person that's gonna tear a ligament, get it fixed, and then go back and do it again. Because you love it, like any athlete, like they have that the love of the game, and there's people that are great athletes that I've seen with great physiques and that are good, they have good looks, but they don't have the passion for it. They're just like, oh, I figured this would be easy because like the way I look and who I am. And then I've seen a lot of those guys wash out, but I there's one student I have who's she goes by the name Auntie Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's not very athletic, and she knows it, and she's aware of it. But she's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen, and because she has so much heart, and she's humble, and that's so. If you're a young and upcoming person, like that's what I see, and I'll notice that. I was like, dang, I'll notice. And any show that I'm on, and I'll walk around and talk to the ring crew guys and some of the students and cameraman, and and you see people that are working extra hard, going. It's noticeable. You know when somebody's working really hard to try to get on a show. Some students are right to break out, and they're just like, I need this person. I need to be noticed that I'm working, that I want to be here, and then I'll get put on. And that's how I got on a lot of shows. I would go, show up, help break down a ring, help clean up, be respectful, and then show everybody that I wanted to be there. And then I got, would get booked. So it's just a lot of times just being present, being respectful, and just having a passion for it, because there's gonna be a lot of times you're like, dang, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? And that's why I always try to think about the old days when I was nervous, excited, and it's like, dang, I was so excited to get into the ring. I got to keep that feeling and just hold on to that. Hold on to your innocence.
Of course, you got to hold that on as well. And finally, as the third and final question of the three fun questions, if you had the choice between Peter Avalon or Ryzen as your tag team partner for the rest of your career, who would you choose and why?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious who I would pick. Ryzen all day. No, Peter Avalon, man. The yin to my yang, my other half. My Gemini brother. We have the same birthday. Just born different years. We have the same birthday. I've missed Peter. I just noticed that on like in social media that we had our last tag match a little over a year ago. So a lot, lots happened. But now that I've slithered my way into AEW, I mean the next thing. That's what everybody's been clamoring about is a PPRay reunion. But who knows if that'll happen? But this is the closest we've ever been. So I'm really excited. And I was over there. I didn't even see Peter at all. So I was like, dang, I miss him.
Well, hopefully you two reunite, and hopefully we might see that reunion of reunion. That's not a word. Reunion of that PPRay.
I would love that, and I'm sure he would too. And then the fans would love it too, even if they weren't aware of us before. They would love us after. I know that for a fact.
Absolutely. Well, once again, Ray, thank you so much for joining me for this interview. Hopefully everything goes well within your career up to this point and beyond. For those who don't know, you can follow Ray on all social medias, on Instagram, on Twitter, I believe, as well. Make sure you guys go follow that as well. And make sure you guys check out his stuff on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Like, come on. That stuff is absolute.
We're heating up. I'm glad we're back to taping. So we have a lot of new stuff coming out, and it's going to be very exciting. Check us out. Check your local listings, but we're on Fight TV. To become the first Grand Slam champion in United Wrestling Network history. Take it from me, kids. Watch Championship Wrestling Hollywood.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ray, and I will see you guys in the next interview.